Hey folks, I'm Pete, and this is Pete's Eats Cooking Videos. Today we're making pizza. You know, people love this pizza, and I think the way you make a fabulous pizza is you pay a little bit of extra attention to the dough, to the sauce, and to the cheese and toppings. When you put it all together, you get a fabulous dish. So let's begin. We're going to do this in three parts. We're going to do the dough, we're going to do the sauce, and then we'll do the toppings. And I'll show you all the ingredients in each portion. As well, you can always look in the bottom bar below to catch any of the ingredients that you need. Let's go. Let's make the dough. Nothing could be easier. All you need is some all-purpose flour, some yeast, some salt, and some water. It's that easy. You can't go wrong. Don't get all tied up about it. It's really, really easy, and I'll show you exactly how to do it. So to make the dough, I'm using 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I'll put it in there. Of course, you can use bread flour if you want, or you could use half and half whole wheat and all-purpose. So there's my 2 cups of flour. I'm also going to add 1.5 cups of water to the flour, and that's going to make quite a wet mixture. And to that, I'm going to add my yeast, about 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. This should be enough to make one nice large pizza. So there's 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. And you'll notice this yeast is the instant yeast. It's the crushed granules of yeast. If you're using the beads or traditional yeast, you want to put that yeast in with the water first, give it a couple of minutes, and then add the flour. So I'm just going to stir this up. And this will make one nice large pizza. And now that I've got it all mixed together, you don't have to get too excited about this, just a bit, just try and make everything wet. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to leave this for about 10 minutes and let the yeast get a good running start before I put the balance of the flour in and the salt. So let's leave that for about 10 minutes. That's been about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's turned a little soupy kind of now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add about 1/2 cup of flour to this, and about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And now I'm going to carefully stir that up, and I'm going to have to take it out of the bowl now. Okay, so I'm going to stir it up, and then I'm going to take it out of the bowl. So I have my counter surface, my kneading surface clean. I'm going to put a little bit more flour in there, and I'll clean off my spoon. And your hands are going to get messy here, so make sure your hands are clean. I want to get all that dough off there. There we go. And now I'm going to take all of this dough. I'm going to clean kind of my bowl out with the dry flour. And then I'm just going to dump it out right onto the work surface. Now this is where a dough scraper comes in really handy. You want to just turn that onto itself a number of times. That's looking a little bit wet, so I'm going to put a little bit more flour. I've added probably about 1 cup of extra flour now. Now that I've got the dough on the work surface, I'm going to keep a little bit of flour on the work surface, and I'm going to knead this dough over onto itself over and over for about 5 to 10 minutes. If it's a little bit wet, you can add some flour, but you don't want to add too much flour. You want to just keep it nice and soft, but you have to be able to work it. Okay, so it's been just over 5 minutes, and the dough's come together nicely. And now I'm just going to drop it back into the bowl, cover it up, and we'll let it rise for about 1.5 hours. And now that'll be a perfect amount of time to do the sauce and the toppings. I love this Pyrex bowl because it's got this lovely lid. I just put it on top. But if you don't have one of these, just use a damp cloth, or you can use some plastic wrap to cover the dough. So for the sauce, you'll need tomatoes, and I use canned tomatoes, and if you can get the San Marzano tomatoes, they're definitely the best. They're not absolutely necessary, but they definitely make the best sauce. Either whole tomatoes, which I prefer, or diced, but definitely not the pureed. Also, you'll need oil, sunflower and olive oil. I use about 50/50. Vinegar, sugar, and then a bunch of spices, salt, pepper, oregano, and pepper flakes. And if you have some old wine around, you can use, pour that in. It adds another level of complexity. And of course, garlic, we definitely want garlic. Okay, to make the sauce, what we do is we put the garlic in first. I'm going to use about 3 cloves of garlic. And then I'm going to put some sunflower oil in, and I'm going to be pretty liberal. I'm going to say that's about a 1/4 cup of sunflower oil. And then also about a teaspoon of oregano. There you go. About a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. There you go, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I do like the chili flakes for a little bit of heat, so just a little dash, just tiny little bit of chili flakes in there. And then salt, or I do like using this herbamare. It's a lovely salt mixture with spices in it. And so I'm going to say about a 1/2 teaspoon of that. And we're going to adjust the salt later. That's about a 1/2 teaspoon of the herbamare. And now I'm going to turn it on and get that going at about medium heat. I want to heat up the garlic. I definitely don't want to burn the garlic, so you do have to watch the garlic at this stage. This is critical, not to burn the garlic or the sauce will be bitter. There's the garlic. It's now boiling in the oil, and I'm just going to make sure it doesn't burn. As soon as I have any inkling that I'm getting too far, I'm going to pour in the tomatoes. You'll notice there is quite a bit of oil here. I'm not shy with the oil because I think the oil, I'm actually going to add more olive oil later to give it a really lovely finish. I think it's a sign of a really nice sauce when it's got that glossy tomato sauce look to it. I think that's good enough. I'm going to add the tomatoes right now. I'm happy with that. Now I just rinsed out the can nicely. You don't want to waste any of that tomato. I'm going to turn up the heat now to really get this going nicely. Give it a good stir so that garlic isn't stuck to the bottom. I'm using the San Marzano tomatoes, and they usually have some basil in with them, which is excellent. That's great. Don't worry about that. That is just going to enhance the flavor. So that's starting to boil nicely. I'm going to add a little bit of vinegar, about a tablespoon, no, maybe not, a teaspoon of vinegar. I'm also going to add some sugar. I do like my sauce sweet, so I'm going to add 1, 2, 3 teaspoons of sugar, and I'll adjust that later possibly. And I do have some old red wine hanging around that hasn't been, it's been here for a while. So I'm going to add that. It's about a cup or 1/2 cup of red wine, and that'll just boil in there. I'm going to cover it and let it boil for a while until it's ready to make into a pureed sauce. So these tomatoes are really disintegrating nicely. You could probably just use a masher to mash them up, but I'm going to use a processor, just a brawn processor, and I'm going to turn this into a nice smooth sauce. That's the way we like it. Of course, you can do as much or as little of this as you want, depending on the texture you like. I think that's plenty. And the final adjustment has to be made in terms of sweet, salt, sour. I'll add a little bit more oil, but this time I'm going to add olive oil to finish it. So add a little bit of olive oil, and I'm going to give it a stir, and you get this beautiful glassy finish to a rich sauce. And that's ready to go on the pizza, and that'll be absolutely delicious. I'm also going to make today a blonde pizza, and for that sauce it's really simple. You just fry up some onions, garlic, and sunflower oil, finish it off with a little bit of olive oil, oregano, salt, and pepper. That's it. Makes a lovely, nice, non-tomatoey blonde sauce. Here's the blonde sauce. It's just an onion diced, 2 cloves of garlic pressed, salt, pepper, herbamare, which I like a lot, and some oregano. And I'm going to let that fry up until the onions turn transparent, and it's done. It's a sauce right there. Here's the blonde sauce, the oil and onion and garlic and a few spices. That's looking really good. I'm just going to put a touch of olive oil in this to finish it off. And that's going to be perfect for a blonde sauce for the veggie pizza. Here's the grated cheeses. It's a kilogram of pizza mozzarella and just a handful of cheddar and a handful of Asiago, so just over a kilogram. This should make 2 pizzas, probably a little bit left over after that as well. Now we're going to roll out the dough and assemble the pizzas. I'll show you how it's done. Here's the pizza dough. It's risen, and I've kind of pounded it down. I'm going to put it out onto, you see how beautifully soft it is? Put it out onto the table. And there you go. Yeah, that'll be too much for one pizza. So I'm going to shave a little bit of off of here with my dough scraper. Okay, so depending, of course, how thick you like your dough. Some people like thin crust, some people like thick crust pizzas. That's probably enough. One nice large pizza with a sort of medium thin crust. There it is. And I'm gonna roll it out. So I'll put some flour on top. And now I'm just trying to roll it out to a nice circle. It's pretty easy to do, actually. If you find it's springing back and it's kind of fighting you, just give it a minute to rest. Okay, so now I've basically got it to the shape I want. I just want to get off any excess flour. I don't want rogue flour on top of the dough, so get rid as much as I can. And now I want to put it onto the form. So the way I do this is I turn it over once on itself, and once again, and even again. And now we'll just slip it onto the form. And I'll unfold it. And you might need to stretch it out just a bit to fit the form nicely. I'm going to put the toppings on now, and either sauce or cheese first. Now, a lot of people in our family like the sauce on top. So I'm going to do that in this case, just to show you something a little bit different. I'm going to spread some cheese on the pizza. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put the sauce right on top of the cheese. And the reason is this really gives the pizza a nice kind of smoky flavor to the sauce. It's like a baked tomato sauce. It really gives it a bit of a different taste. And on this one I'm putting onions and pepperoni. So we're getting ready to put this in the oven. What you want to do is you want it at the highest temperature your oven goes at. 525, 550, however high it can go, the highest temperature, and you put it up in the oven as high as it will go, the highest rack and highest temperature. It's been about 10 minutes, so what I want to do is I want to give this pizza a turn. I'm going to give it a turn, just 180 degrees. You may have noticed there's a lot of smoke coming out of that oven. I was baking something in there before and it spilled over and it's a bit of a mess. And it's happened to me before where the pizza's been in the oven and it's been smoking and I thought, oh my goodness, it's going to be terrible. But it was actually the best pizza ever. It had this really lovely smoky flavor to it. Don't do it on purpose, but don't worry if your oven gets smoky. Here's the blonde zucchini pizza. I've got the dough rolled out. And the first thing I'm going to do is add the sauce. Okay, I think that's pretty good. And now for the cheese. So my triple mixture. Of course, you could put more or less cheese depending on how you like it. And now the toppings. Zucchini, a nice layer of zucchini all the way around. And now the diced tomato. I got fairly big chunks of this tomato. These are beautiful tomatoes. I'm not going to be shy with these drippings either. I'm going to put this tomato drippings right on top too. And I think a really nice addition to this pizza is some fresh ground black pepper. And that's perfect, and it's ready to go in the oven. Here you go, meat lovers pizza, veggie pizza, 2 delicious pizzas made from scratch. Absolutely fabulous. Pizza 101, keep watching, because I'm gonna do tips and tricks. Enjoy.